Masechta Zevachim, Daf Mem Hey Amar Aleph. We're starting the fifth line from the top. We're starting from the Mishnah. Okay? Okay, Zog the Mishnah. Koche Ayivde Gechavim. The Kabbalah is that the Goyim are Makrib. No, if Mizbeach. For Nedonim and Nedavis, they're allowed to bring Nedonim and Nedavis. Goyim. A Neda, a Kab Neda, a Kab Nedava, that's allowed. Ein Chayam Alav Mishum Pigel. If a Yid shechsin and he has the machshava for his carbon to eat it after the allotted time, or out of a place, the Yid who's doing all the Aveda for him, so now he wants to eat it later, let's say the Yid wants to participate, then there's no din of Pigel. Noisa, the Tameh, it's the Goy's carbon. And by a Goy, it's not the concept of Pigel. Noisa, the Tameh, also if they had in mind, if it was Noisa, and they ate it, it was left over physically after the time, and he eats it, he's not chayiv for Noisa. And the same thing, if he was Tameh, if a Yid was Tameh and he ate the carbon, is not over. The Yidden, only the Yidden can do the Aveda. They're doing the whole Aveda for the Goy, for the sure. The Goy can't bring it on the Mizbeach. Has to be a Goy.
What does the Goy get out of it? Why the Goy wants to do this thing?
He wants to give an Adava. Who knows? Like the Gemara, the same thing. If they take there's a Isa to Shech the carbon bachutz, and the Yid took the Goy Shebehema that he designated for an Adava or a Neda, Potter, he's part of an Shchitas Chutz. Because he's part of Shchita from the punishment of Shchita's Chutz. Those are the words of Rav Shimon. Rav Yosi Mechayiv, and Rav Yosi says, no. All the Avedis that the Yid is doing for the guy, all the Yisurim are applicable. Yeah.
All the Yisurim are just the Shchita.
Shchita, if the Yid does the Shchita outside for the guy, he's doing the Shchita. The Yid is the Sheikhet.
Oh, but all the other Dinim are not appropriate to him.
What do you mean? All of them. He says, let's say he's shechting. The Yid is taking the guy's behema. We'll go through each Isser. One, he had this, let's say, a neder for a night and a day. He says, no, I'm going to eat in next week. I'm having a bar mitzvah. I'm going to save a big chunk of this meat. I'm having it for next week. You're having it for next week, so I got to pigel. But if it belonged to a Yid, this behema, if it would have belonged to a Yid, if he ate it, he would have been chayiv kares. Since it belongs to a guy, there's no isa pigel. Let's say the same thing. He left the fats on the mizbeach. It's supposed to be one night, 1 day, 1 night, or 2 days, 1 night. But he left it after the zman, so there has a din of neisa that you chayiv kares. If a Yid is doing it for a guy, it's the guy's carbon, and he eats that neisa. He's not chayiv on neisa. Al derzeh if he's tough. Rabbi Yosi says he has the exact same dinin that applied to a Yid. A Yiddish carbon, that's if a guy brings it, has the same severity.
What's his reasoning?
We're going to go through it. Right now we're just telling you facts. Okay, you're going to have facts. We're getting to it. We're going to say, jump. The kachim of Eid the Kecham, Loinanin, you're not allowed a guy who had made something holy, he sanctified it. You cannot have anah, but if you did have anah, you're not oiva meila, because the whole isa anah was like Zedus Chachamim. Really, you're allowed to have anah also from what a goy made hegdish. But the Chacham said should be aser. But if you did have anah, you're not oiva meila. And now we're just repeating over the words in the Mishnah that you're not going to be chayiv not for the isa pigel nor noisa, and if he's tummy and he ate the goyish part of the carbon, he's not chayiv. But ain't oisen tmura. There's a din by tmura that if they exchange the behema of let's say a oila, he says, look, I designated the skinny goat. I decided I want to give this fat goat instead of the skinny goat. So not only does the fat goat become a oila, the skinny goat remains a oila. They're both holy. The kedusha remains on both, but not by a goy. The exchange doesn't become holy. Okay, In my meter behemoths carbon nach behemoths chulin, ein behemoths achulin nitfeset. The kedusha doesn't. The behemoths chulin doesn't contract any kedusha. It doesn't transfer over. Okay. The ein mevin nesachin. Now there are carbonates that you bring libations with, and then there's also a carbon of nesachim itself. Libation means of yain. That's chayain. There's just a carbon of that. So he says nesachim alone without a carbon, a guy doesn't bring. There's no. He doesn't bring it without. But with avol carbon tone nesachim. If they bring a carbon, which normally comes with nesachim, you have a lot of times a mincha that comes with nesachim. Okay. In such a case, yes, that he does bring the sachem. In all these above mentioned dinim, lahachme, that the kachim of Nachim have a din like kachi Yisrael, lefishanema bahen, because by the kachim of Nachim it says asher yakrivu la Hashem. It's what's being sacrificed to Hashem. That's what we look at. He gave it to Hashem. It's Hashem, so it has already the kedusha to the person, not to the person, to where it was given to. And since the way it was given to is La Hashem, so that's what gives it the severity, and that's why Yid and Nagaya are equal. Something when would these words said? Bekachim mizbeach. Only something that's normally sacrificed onto the mizbeach. Aval bekachim bedik habayis. But those things that you use. He was magnish for the fixing of the Beis Hamikdash, for the maintenance of the Beis Hamikdash. Moilim bahan. Then there is a din me'ilah. If somebody has enough of those things that a goy designated nice stuff that it should be used for the maintenance of the Beis Hamikdash, and if a yid eats from that or has enough from it,
he's not following what he just said before.
We said there's no din of me'ilah. That's talking about kachim mizbeach. What? We just said it. Tana Rabbanan, the first words, Kachay Kechavim, Ein Loy Nanim, Ba'aba Veloy Ma'ilin. There's no Isa Me'ila. Now we're telling you there is a Isa Me'ila only by, there's no Isa Me'ila by Kachay Mizbeya. By Kachay Mizbeya, and we're going to see the reason for it. Says Gemara, we learned Kachay Nachim Loy Nanim Veloy Ma'ilin. So we said that by Kachay Nachim, you can't have a no, but there's no Isa Me'ila. Loy then in the whole issue of that you're not allowed to have a no is midrabanan. There's only a gzeres chachamim. But loy mailin. But this that we said there's no issa when you have a no from hekdesh of a goy. He says that's minatayah. The gama meila chet metuma. We learn out with a gzeres shava meila from truma. By it says lashon by meila nefesh kisimol mal v'chot. It says lashon chet. By Truma it says V'shomin es mishmat v'lo Yisrael chet. Both say chet. And the Betruma ksiv b'nei Yisrael. By Truma it says B'feidish Dafke b'nei Yisrael. V'lo Yechavim. Not goyim. And since by Truma we know only the din of Truma is only by a Yid, not by a goy. And we learn out Me'ila from Truma. So by Me'ila is only by Yid. The Yisrael Me'ila, the concept of Me'ila is only by Yid and not by a guy with a Gzeira Shava. For they have the same word, chet chet, from Truma. That we said in the Mishnah. There's no Isa by a Goyish Behema, a carbon of Pigel Neisa and Tamei. My time, what's the reason? So he says, the Asi Pigel, we learn out Pigel with a Gzeira Shava of Noisa. We learn out Pigel for Noisa. Asi Noisa, Chilo Mituma. And Noisa we learn out from Tuma. Over Tuma, so you learn out Pigel from Noisa from Tuma. But by Tuma it says Befeidish B'nei Yisrael. If you look in the pasuk, it says V'yinazu b'tumasam mikache B'nei Yisrael. It says Daka B'nei Yisrael have it's mashma Daka kachim of a Yid, but we like kachim to tell you not chayiv on achlis kachim nachrim. If you're b'tumas haguf, if you have a tamidik haguf and you eat as a yid who has a tamidik haguf eats from a carbon, goyish carbon is not chai for the tumah. And we learn out the same thing. We learn out noisa from tumah. If he eats noisa of a goy's behema, he's not going to be chai because noisa you learn out from tumah. And pigul we learn out from noisa with a gzeira shava. That if somebody has a machshavas pigul on a goyish carbon and he eats it, he's not going to be chayiv kares. We said that the exchange that he made, the kedusha doesn't transfer to the exchange. Usually they both become kaddish. No, here the chulin will not become kaddish. My time, what's the reason? The iskash tmura lemais behema. Tmura is in the hekesh, means that they're right next to each other. So since they're right next to each other, we compare one to the other. So he says tmura and mais behema, the psukim are right next to each other. So we compare. It's the zelbe kevar. It's a hekesh. Zugleichnis. Gzeir shav is the zelbe kevar and beide plätze. Here it's a hekesh because it's right next to each other. So we learn out tmura from mais behema. Mais behema is kis l'mais dagan. Mais behema, we from the word aser to aser, we say it's a ribui, it's an extra word to tell us to be makish the mais behema to mais dagan. Uba mais dagan ksib b'nei yisrael. It says ki es masa b'nei yisrael. That means dafke by yisrael. There's the din of mais dagan. The loy by yichav, not by a goy. So just like there, so too we'll say by mais behema, the whole din of mais behema is only by a yid, not by a goy. And from mais behema we learn out the tmura, which is by the hakish. In fact, how can you do two occasions? We have a klal. I'm going to speak it out outside, but we said it once before. When it comes to kachim, you cannot learn out one from a hekesh and then a third one from another hekesh. Two occasions on the same limud, we cannot make only one hekesh when it comes to kachim.
It can only go that far.
Right. The chidava halamid behekesh chayzim halamid behekesh. By kachim, we said the klal that you cannot do two occasions for the same limud. And for the Gemara, no, it's when do we say you don't do a double hekesh? If it's all kachim, we said that's the rule by kachim. Oh, but Ma'aseh Dagan, from where we're learning it out from, Ma'aseh Dagan is the place where it says Dafke b'nei Yisrael are mechuyev and Ma'aseh Dagan, not only a Dafke b'nei, not a goy. So as the Gemara chulin hu, but Ma'aseh Dagan is not kachim, it's chulin, and it's not kachim. So if it's not kachim, so then you can have the hekesh. In fact, Gemara hani chalaman. That's only if you say that the klal was that the melamed is not kachim. Here, who is the melamed that says dafke b'nei yisol, and then we do an occasion to say by the other two dagan. So you start up in dagan. So since the melamed has to be kachim to say you don't make a double hekesh, and the dagan is the one that's teaching for tmura and ma'aseh behema, the dagan here is not kachim, so you're allowed to do it. We go after the students. We don't go after the malamed. The one that we're learning out, meaning the students, that means ma'aseh behema. That's ma'aseh behema and tmura. These two we're learning out from ma'aseh dagan. So that's a double hekesh. If you say the ikar of not doing a double hekesh depends on from where the one the teacher. If the teacher, the teacher has got to be a holy person, like you said, and from it we're learning out for the other two places. So then it's perfect because here the teacher is not holy; it's Ma'aseh Dagan. But if you say it's not the teacher, the ikar is the Talmud, the one that's learning from the teacher, the Ma'aseh behema and the tmura. So how can you make a double hekesh? So you're right. This one is off. So where do we know taka that by tmura it doesn't contract kedusha by a goyish behema? Says the Gemara, "Elamais behema chayvish ein kavul lahem zman who v'chol carbon v'chayvish ein lahem zman kavul every carbon that's a chayv and it doesn't have a set time for akrava. You saw mais ve'v yicham le'maisu." He says only he's according to this mais behema itself. Again, what do we learn out from ma'aseh behema? If it has to be a chayiv, and if it's a chayiv and it doesn't have a set time,
that does not make it tmura. That's where we. That's
right. So by ma'aseh, so what do we learn out? Only by ma'aseh behema, only ma'aseh behema that's in the gather of the gidari of follows the rules of ma'aseh behema. Which ma'aseh behema is a chayiv. One has to give ma'aseh, right? Versus when it comes to a carbon of a guy, he only can bring Nidarim and Nadavis whenever he wants. It's not a chayv. So since it's nishkin chayv, he doesn't fall into the category of Maisa Behema in the Gedonim of Maisa Behema. That's why he can't make a Tmura. Maisa Behema, if you did a Tmura with a Maisa Behema, so I would say, Maisa Behema, the Kedusha does get transferred to the Chulin. If you decided, I want to make an exchange, they both remain Kaddish. By a Goyish of carbon, which is not a Choiv, doesn't have the same Kedusha. Doesn't have that level of Kedusha. Yeah, the Kedusha doesn't go to the better Behema by a Goy because that's not in the rules of Behema. It's not a Choiv. It's not a Choiv. He can bring whatever he wants. We learned from the Mishnah, he doesn't bring libations. Now, we're talking about there are carbon that a Nesachim was brought on its own, and then there are Kabbanis that when you brought a carbon, you had to bring Nesachim with it. So he says, which one? Wine. Yeah. So this Nesachim, if he wanted to bring the Nesachim alone, a guy doesn't bring it. But if it's together with a carbon, then he does bring it. And we're going to learn it now. It says in the Torah, Benegeya to the Pasha of Nischei Nadav, it says, Kol Ezach Yasa Kocha Es Eila. It says, every Jew, born Jew. Ezach means Agibar Nayid. Agibar Nayid, a natural Yid. Agibar Nayid. Ezach, maybe Nesachim, maybe Nesachim. We know now, from this pasuk that talks about by Nesachim, only who can bring on Nesachim? Somebody who was born as a Jew. Yach, I would have thought like Tuna Nesachim. So I would have thought even when he brings oila, he wouldn't have to bring the Nesachim. Talmud later comes the pasuk and teaches us kacha meaning that chayvus Nesachim because of a zevach. So if he's bringing it with a carbon, then it needs to be brought in the Nesachim. It's connected to it. Okay? And it does make a difference if it's Yisrael or not. He has to. I think the words teaches us that the Chavs Nesachim is not because it's a carbon on its own, it's because of the Zevach. It's because of the carbon that is bringing. Rabbi Yossi said, in all these above mentioned dinim, meaning the Me'ila, the Pigul, the Noisai, right? Lahachmir. He says by Kach Nachim it's going to have a Chumrah just like Kach Yisrael. This is Rabbi Yossi. When did he say it? Only by Kach Mizbeach. Only by not by Bedek Abayis. Only by Kach Mizbeach. Things that you were sacrificed on the Mizbeach. Those will have the dinim only by a yid and not by a. I'm sorry. Rabbi Yossi says a goy will have the same thing as a yid, but by Kach and Bedek Abayis, not. No, the reverse. I said those that are connected with the Hakrav and the Mizbeach. By Kach and Bedek Abayis, there will be the din of Me'ila by Kach and Bedek Abayis. Even by goy, yeah. Right. Right. Yes, Me'ila b'Kach Nachim.
Is that what it said we said before?
The Kachim is not dafke mit what amukdash l'shem HaKalim. Meilim behem. There is a din of Meila, Isa Meila. Okay, sagt the Gemara, my time. What's the reason that Reb Shimon is mechalik by me? Reb Shimon. I'm going. Reb Shimon is mechalik. What? Okay. What's the reason? Again, my time. What's the reason that Rabbi Shimon is mechalik between Meila of Kachim Mizbeach of a goy and Kachim Bedek Abayis? Because he holds the Chigamra Meila Chet Mitruma. Because when we learned out Meila from Truma with a Gzeira Shabbat, it says Chet by both. You remember I mentioned the two psukim to teach us that Kachim Nachim are not included in Meila, just like the Truma. By Truma, they're not included. By Truma, it says Dafke B'nai Yisrael. Dumya de Truma. The Kadisha Kedushas Haguf. It has to be similar to Truma. which is Kedushas HaGuf. That means not something that could be redeemed. Truma, if you look at the Truma and you want to redeem Truma, you can't redeem it for money. But let's say Kotche Bedek HaBayis, you found something beautiful, the guy wants to, or even a Yid, he wants to give something beautiful and he says, no, I need it back for my house. I can redeem it. Not by Truma. So he says, we learn out for anything that like Truma that cannot be redeemed. Avo Kedushas Bedek HaBayis, the Kedushas Damim. So where do we say that it has a din of Kedusha? By Kotche Mizbeach. He says that by Kotche Mizbeach, by Kotche Mizbeach, there's no din me'ila. It has to be like Truma. Just like by Truma, there's no din me'ila, and it's only by B'nai Yisrael. The Torah says by Truma that only who is mechuyev in Truma, B'nai Yisrael, Nishken Goy. So we have to follow the Gedolim of Truma. Truma is something that you cannot redeem. So Dafke is something that's similar to Truma, the Goy has no shaykhs to. That's Kotche Mizbeach. But Kotche Bedek HaBayis, which could be redeemed, so Goy, there's the din of Kedushas Bedek HaBayis. The Kedushas Damim, which is Indian that you can redeem with money, has a din of Kedushas Damim, Loi. So we learn out from the Gzeira Shabbat to exclude Kotche Bedek HaBayis of Goyim from the din of Meila. No, there's going to be a din Meila. The only place where we're going to exclude the din Meila is by something that's similar to Truma, which says B'nai Yisrael Dafka, and Truma is only such a thing that cannot be redeemed. That's Kotche Mizbeach. But Kotche Bedek HaBayis that could be redeemed, that's not compared to Truma, to say Dafka B'nai Yisrael not going. By Kotche Bedek HaBayis, it has no, it doesn't follow Dafka B'nai Yisrael, only Kotche Mizbeach follows that. Okay. So Dam, the blood of a carbon, Shenitman, that became Tameh, Zirakoi, the kohen threw it onto the Mizbeach, B'shoigeg. If you threw it B'shoigeg Hutza, the halacha is that it gets, the carbon is accepted. There's a special part of the Kohen Gadol that was miratze even for Dam Tuma. The tzitz of the Kohen Gadol, only at that time, when the tzitz existed, it was able to be miratze on even on Tuma. Says Gemara, b'meizit loy hutza. But if he did it b'meizit, it's not going to be forgiven. Minatei it is. The tzitz would forgive even on Dam Tuma, even b'meizit. It's only the Chachamim Gikansin that the basa shouldn't become mutter. But still, it's merutza. The Kavan is merutza. He's forgiven. What about eating the meat, which becomes mutter after you throw the zika? L'mash ma'ishlam, you're allowed, the balabas can eat the meat. So once the blood, let's say it was blood tummy, so if it was b'shegik you can eat the meat. But if it's b'mezit, the Chacham said no. Even though Minateri he should be able to. But the kapara is a kapara. Says only if it's a yachid of the common tzibur. But what if it was a tzibur that was tamei? Whether they became tamei b'shegig or bein b'mezit, hutza, it's going to be hutza, because we say tumra hutra b'tzibur.
So what do with the kohen? If he didn't be amazing, you don't throw him away for the job.
No, if he was here, we talk. That's by yachid. You're talking about. Yeah, I guess so. We're talking about the dam became tummy. The dam was tummy. The blood, nish the kohen. So he says, I think that's what he said before. No, dam shall come shenitma. The dam shall come with
the kohen doesn't be amazing.
Right. So he says that's why we're going to punish him. You did it amazing. No people can't eat from the behemoth. Yeah, no, but he could. By tzibur, if it's a mice of a tzibur, tuma huta b'tzibur. It's a tzibur, we have to be mated. Ube kabana is of goyim. Bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid, loy hurza. By a goy, if a goy brought a carbon, and the dam is tamei, whether it's shoigig or mezid, the tzitz is not going to forgive for the dam atuma, for a goy. Amru Rabbanan kamid Rav-Papa. The Rabbanan said before Rav-Papa, come on, who is this following? The lake Rabbi Yosi, it doesn't follow Rabbi Yosi. The Rabbi Yosi, if you are following Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yosi says, I give the guy same deal. Everything, any deal that happens with a guy, Every deal that happens with a yid should happen with a guy. So it should be murza. Papa afilu teimad avyesi. I can even say it's avyesi. Shiny hustle. There by the bedik his dam. I'm sorry, by the zik his dam that became tamei. He says the Amakra, the pasuk says v'haya mitzchay by the Kohen Gadol. It says v'haya mitzchay tamid l'ratzin. The tzitz should be on his metzach l'ratzin to forgive l'ratzis at a time when it was tamei. Lahem. When it says lahem, it's mashma that the tzitz is menatzeh dafke lahem, dafke to the yidden. The v'loy loy v'cham not to your goy. That's how you're learning lahem. Adik lahem means dafke b'nei Yisrael, not to goy. Only now, let me bring a new pasuk. It says b'negei tetuma. It says v'yinazru. It's talking about v'yinazru means the vayta sich yisrachaku mitumasam. That's v'yinazru. Mikache b'nei Yisrael asher heim magdishim lit. That they are sanctified to me. So it's to warn you that to the tmeim they shouldn't eat kachim. Hachanami here also we should say hey only by yidden. To exclude kachi nachim that they don't have the iser of achidah b'tumas haguf. And Rabbi Yossi says no. If you're tamei, you cannot eat from the kachim that a goy had brought and gave it to kachim. But if you're learning lahem as a miyut, that it only means the Eden and not the goyim, you have the same lahem by tuma. It says Hashem.
So from a goy you could eat it, then it's tamei.
Rabbi Yossi says you can't, but over here we should have said you could. The first lahem, the lahem taught us that the dam that becomes mirutza from the tzitz of the kohen is only from the yisrael, not for goyim. That's from lahem. It's like haim. It says you make a deal like that from haim. So by Tumah it says mamish haim, and it says haim that you're not allowed to eat from a carbon that's tamei. This is talking about she should say dafke haim, dafke yid, and not a goyish carbon. When a goyish carbon, you should be able to eat bitumah, and we know Rabbi Yossi says no, they're the exact same level, and he's the one that learns the diuk of haim v'loy b'nei Yisrael. I mean haim v'loy b'nei. Says you're right. Elam and Abashi, only the reason why by tumah it doesn't go off by a goy, because Amakar l'rotzing lahem lefnei Hashem. It says l'rotzing means that the Eibishter is merutza. So they don't find such favor in the eyes of Hashem to become forgiven when it's tamei. It's only the Jews. We are the chosen ones. So we're the chosen people. So we are in the gather of rotzing. When it says l'rotzing, yeah.
He says he shouldn't be forgiven. The goy, he says can't.
No. Zog the Mishnah. You remember there are things that you're not chayiv pigul. Remember only what type of things could be chayiv pigul? Only something that depends on another thing to make it mutter. Like zrikas hadam makes the carbon, the meat mutter, but the zrikas hadam itself cannot become pigul. Koimetz, when you take off the kemitza, the shiyari of the mincha you can eat, but the koimetz itself doesn't have anything making it mutter. There's no such a thing. The shiyari mincha is shaykh to become pigul, but not the kemitza. Koimetz, the levaina, the ktedes. That's what he said. So it's one that you're not chayiv pigul on, like koimetz, levaina, and ktedes. Chayav ala mishum neisa. But when it comes to neisa, they will. If you ate kemitza, you're going to be chayiv. If somebody who eats the kemitza, he eats the from it neisa. Leftover, it was left over after a lot of time. Or the umishum tamei, if he was tamei and he ate the kemitza, he's going to be chayiv kares. Chutz min adam, except for dam, and we'll learn why is dam a special exception. Reb Shimon mechayiv bedava lechel. Reb Shimon is mechayiv only by something that's the derech to eat it. People brought eitzim as a carbon, and you had to put salt on the eitzim, but that's what the Yomah brought. But they brought eight wood as a carbon. Valavoina, frankincense, v'akteris, and the incense. Because it's not the derech to eat wood. So since it's not the derech to eat wood, it's not gonna. You're not chai for noisa if the wood is if it's noisa or the dubistame and the est holds. You're not gonna be chai for eating a carbon betuma. Huh? It wasn't for bread. No. We're not talking about bedek abayis here. We're talking about a carbon. He says befedes. He brought it. Yeah, sure. They brought, and they had to bring salt with it. I don't know what they did with the salt. They salted the wood, but if it brings down, they brought salt with the wood.
Maybe it burns better.
It burns. I don't know. Tell me, Rabbanim learned the Brayse. Yachal, I would have thought lo yehi chayav mishum tuma el adav sheish le'matinim bein adam bein mizbeach. I would have thought to say that he shouldn't be chayiv when it comes to tuma, just like by pigul. Just like by pigul, you say only when is the machshavas pigul taking effect? Only if it's something that became mutter from something else. Like I told you, the blood and the meat. He sprays the blood, the meat becomes mutter. So the meat could become a pigul, but not the spray of the blood, or kmitza that makes the shiari amincha mutter. Only the shiari amincha, not the kremetz. So I would have thought maybe by tumah it has to have the same rules. It has to be adav sheish lamatinin. And he says, why would I say it has to be dafka adav sheish lamatinin? Vedinu with a kavacheno ma pigul shehu bikviya pigul. If somebody had machshavas pigul, he could only bring one type of a chatas, a behema. He has to bring the ox. He can't bring whether he's rich or poor, it's the same one. Ubi yediyah achas, and it has to only be one yediyah. The one that eats pigul b'shegi is chayv chatas, even though he never knew it was pigul till after he ate it, and only then he had his first yediyah that he ate pigul. Only for that in itself is enough to make him chayv chatas. And it never becomes hutta b'tzibur. No such a thing. So it's much more severe when it comes to pigul. But let's look at tuma. And nevertheless says by this, all these three chumra dikadinim, ein chayav no lavel adav sheish l'matirin, bein la'adam bein la'mizbeach. So whether it's adam or mizbeach. Now tuma is much more lighter. Tuma number one, she beil v'yoyed. Tuma, it goes according to the wealth of the person. He's a rich man, he brings a behema. Not so rich, Gord, the dalam shebadalam, amincha. So it's by Tuma, the carbon, the Torah was more lenient. Which this, and the Torah said, we're not going to be mechayiv your carbon unless you first had a knowledge before that you were tamei, and then you forgot, and then you realized you were tamei after again. That's only if there's two yediyas. So that shows there's big limitations because it's a lighter kedusha. And when it comes to tuma, we have a klal, a concept. Tuma hutta b'tzibur, like by the Kabim Sachim. If most of the people were tamei, they were allowed to bring the Pesach. So since it's so much lighter, shouldn't it have the kula that it shouldn't be chayiv? Only if it's something that's matid, but if it's something that doesn't, if it's something like the dam or like the kmitza, it shouldn't be chayiv because nothing else could be matid. Tamalei comes the pasuk and tells us asher hey makdishim li. The pasuk asher hey makdishim li is come to it's a yitur. He says here to tell us the lashon asher makdishim is miyutar. He says, and since it's miyutar, it's telling us all mikdashim. Even though it doesn't have a dava achad that's being mated, the din will be that he'll be chayiv for noisa and tumah. Zak the Gemara Yachal, I would have thought. So that was and it has to be, of course, it has to be a dava shadak lachla. Okay, Zak the Gemara Yachal, I would have thought I would have thought that the achilas kodesh b'tumah, his punishment happens if he eats it, even from Meshuk Dashud Adava, even from when he said, I'm making this Hagdish, not when he made it Mutter. Meshuk Dava, I would have thought Meshuk Dashud Adava, he's just by saying it's Hagdish, and now he goes and he eats a bit Tumah, I would have thought he should be Chayv Doinish. Talmud Leimei comes in the Pasuk and teaches us, Kol Isha She Yikrav. Yikrav tells us it has to be a much further stage in order to say that he ate a bit Tumah, he should be Chayiv. It has to be on a much further stage. What's the further stage? When it says are you talking about that he had to touch it? There's such a din by touching it, but if you touch it, you're already chayiv kares? No such a din. You only chayiv by touching if you eat by tuma if your tummy, only if you eat it, not by touching it. Kares is only for actual eating. So what is the pasuk Yikab coming to tell us? You cannot be touching it. That for touching it, you chayiv kares. Has to be achila. Says pasuk is talking about that he's dealing with. It's already ro'ui to be already sacrificed on the base on the mizbeach. It's ready to be eaten. It's at that sprayed, and he's ready to. It could be eaten, or it could be already put on the mizbeach, and then he eats it. Then he's going to be chayiv kares. Okay, so how's this? By yesh lematirin, that by if it's a case that something else was matit for the aktora, for the achila, or the mashal for the yishiyari hamincha, so then mishayikvu hamatirin. There I would say he actually has to sacrifice it on the mizbeach, and whatever's left over after you put the koimetz to burn on the mizbeach from the yishiyari hamincha, or from the carbon, whatever's left over, you get to eat it. But if you're tummy and you eat it, then you're going to be chayiv einish. Okay, ein loy matin. What about it's such a thing that there's nothing that's being matit. So when are you going to be chayiv? So he says, "Mishayigdish b'kli shares, l'mash the blood. You mekabel the kli shares, it became kedusha. The kemitza, when you drop it in to the kli shares, what did the kohen do? He took from one pan, he made out of the flour, he made a kemitza, and he dropped it in a kli. So when it was dropped in the kli, it became kodesh. And if he eats from there, then he's going to be chayiv. Okay, Zog Yimar Ashkan Tuma. You found me perfectly for Tuma, a case of Tuma, when he's tummy and he eats, that he's going to be chayiv kares. Noisa menalan. How do we know noisa? Zog Yimar Asa Chila Chila Mituma. We learn now by noisa, if somebody eats something that was left over after the allotted time, l'chayri ba'esh tisar, something noisa. What do we do with noisa? He's supposed to burn it, and instead of burning it, he said, "I'll eat it." So if he ate it, it's chayiv kares.
It's like burned.
It's like burned. So he says, "How do you know you chayiv kares for that?" He says, "Also chilo mituma." We learn out the Isa noisa with Agzeda Shabbat. It says the lashon chilo lo yichalu by noisa, and it says lo yichalu by tuma. So we learn out the chilo with Agzeda Shabbat. That just like by tuma, if he eats something that tuma, he's going to be chayiv kares. So too. By Noisa, it says Chilul, he'll be chayiv. If he eats Noisa, he'll be chayiv. Kares. In fact, let's learn now. But it's show better from Pigul. And by Pigul, we say just like Pigul, you say only by Dvarim sheyesh lam matirin. That's where you'll be chayiv. But adavar she'ein lam matirin, he's not going to be chayiv. So say here, the koimetz is adav shein lein matirin, the adam is adav shein matirin, levena, whatever, all these things. So he shouldn't be chayiv because we learn out from Pigul. So you want to stop it. It makes more sense to say he learns it out from Tuma. Shekin Gozel Simen, because you have Gozel as a Simen. The Gimel is Guf. What did we say by Guf? That the Noisa, the Noisa itself became a defect. The Chetzer itself became a defect. Through this, that it stayed longer than it's a lot of time. So Tuma, it's a ma'ira that it affected the Guf. He went and did something to his Guf that he became Tameh. Mashen Kim Pigul, it has nothing to do with the Guf. It's a machshava. What makes it possible? Because you had a thought to eat it after a lot of time. Nothing to do with the Guf. The etzem chetzer becoming tameh, so you can't compare it. Zrika by Nisa and by Tuma has nothing to do with Zika. So he says the only one that has a Zika is Pigul. So you can't. So Tuma and Nisa are similar, that they have nothing to do with Zika. That's the Zayin. The Lamed is the Chilul. We have the same word, Chilul. Says the Gemara, Adarabba, Faket, me Pigul Avalei Lamelech. I should have learned now from Pigul because there's more things that the Pigul has in common with Noisa. Shekain, Noisa. What's Pigul? It's for he had a machshava to eat it la'achazman. What's Noisa? Says ibegiblim nochen zman. So they have in common. Another thing is tzitz tohed. The tzitz is the tzitz of the kohen can be meratza by the tumah. But not by so we only wear by the Pigul and by the Noisa. Bizman Kar, here he says, okay. Noise Adam Pigel Shenim Tuma, Bechamisha Dvarim, Huta, Sheisuri Nice Pigel Shneim, Lahuta Kol Mishumakim, Mashenkin Tuma, Shut Betziba. Then he says, also you have the Huta. Tuma is Huta Betziba. Right? And Noise and Pigel is not Huta Betziba. Tzitz, Psule Noise Pigel, by both, the Tzitz won't help. Only with the Tzitz help to be Menatza by Tuma. That's two. Tahir, that both of them were said b'tahirin, that it was talking about a person who was tahir ate noisa, or by pigul is a person who was tahir. Mashen came in the case of tumah is a person who was tamid. Bisman, they both are talking about after a lot of time. And Karev, that the noisa and pigul by both, it's chutz lemkainei. So both of them have in common there too. Here it's more, so it's more similar to Pigul than to Tuma. And the one element, Tani Levi, we learn now from this that lady, the Tani Levi learned in the Braisa. It says that the Isa Achilas Kodesh Betuma includes even the Adav Shein La Mate. Menai Shabbos B'Psul Zman. How do you know the Psul Neisa is even after this man? How do we know he's talking about there? That there it's included, and also Dvarim Shein La Mate. Even by something that outside it wasn't matir, how do we know that there too the din of neisa is applicable? If you look at the word that's written, second mamish, lo yichal is two lamets. The two lamets, psul neisa, echad psul neisa, echad psul tuma. Side the psul neisa and side the psul tuma. That's what we learn out from there.